Go to St. Patty's Day in Savannah.
All the time.
Meet a girl. My wife always knows the story, so if she listens to this, she'll be fine with it. Meet a girl. And she went to Georgia Southern University. Never heard of Georgia Southern in my life.
Got you.
Down on River Street. I met her about 20 minutes later. She got arrested for underage drinking. But I was like, man, Georgia Southern sounds interesting.
What's up, everybody? My name is Adam, and I'm the host of the UKnowAdamTsang podcast, the show that is dedicated on bringing on passionate people, learning about their stories, and delivering value to entrepreneurs. So if that's what you're interested in, go ahead and follow, like, and subscribe. You know what I'm saying?
How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the UKnowAdamTsang podcast, where you get to know a little bit more about people, passions, and all things business. Today, sitting across the way, I have Bryan, Neal of Low Country Drifters, which is, well, welcome to the show, which is a boating experience company.
That's correct.
That takes people on an experience where at?
All throughout the Low Country. You know, that's why it's called Low Country Drifting. Low Country is a unique area of the world.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost its own ecosystem. It's again, I say unique. You can't go anywhere else in the world and be in the Low Country. It's only here.
That's right.
So it's got to be, you know, from South Carolina, they kind of claim it, all the way to almost North Florida, Amelia Island, and in between there.
Yeah.
We're right in the heart of it. Georgia's got a small coastline. If you ask people from the Midwest, they don't even realize that Georgia has a coastline.
Yeah.
But we do, and it's a unique spot on this planet.
Yeah.
And so I want to take people out on a boat to get, you know, out of the bar and off the street into the water is what I say.
Love that. Love that.
So it's again, a unique ecosystem. When you talk about that, you talk about the animals that live there, and you talk about the history behind why this area is important.
Yeah.
You know, I do the tours. It's not fishing. Everybody wants to go fish. I do fish. I love fishing. And everybody's like, oh, it's a fishing tour, because they think boat, they think fishing.
Yeah.
That's not it. You know, and it's not a trolley tour either, like you get on River Street. It's on a boat. It's in the water. But there's a lot of things you can do. We can go. There's everything from the fossil hunting that we can do, because they dredged the Savannah River up, and they built barrier islands in the Savannah River that were made from dredging the Savannah River.
Yeah.
And they dug up a bunch of fossils and stuff, and they dumped them onto these islands. Bird Island, where Fort Pulaski is at, is one of those. On its western tip of that island is where we go when we go fossil hunting. You can find everything from woolly mammoth, you know, chunks of their tusks, to, you know, megalodon teeth, to all kinds of dinosaur bones. To
That's amazing.
Artifacts from ships. They just dug up some cannons here recently from the Revolutionary War.
That's amazing.
Just this year, in February of this year.
Mm-hmm.
So we go up and down those rivers. Some people want to go see the giant cargo ships. The biggest ships on the entire east coast of the United States can come into the Savannah River now, because of the dredging. And to see those things is humbling, to see them come by you in my little boat. We can be on the water right next to them, feet away. And it's pretty awesome.
That's super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, thank you for kind of like that intro.
Mm-hmm.
I think we know a little bit of kind of like what it is that your company does.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very interested about people's stories of how they got there. So tell me a little bit about, you know, have you always been on the water? Like, is that something that is a passion of yours, or where did this all start?
Sure. And I wish it was like a lineage story all the way through that. Like I grew up as old salty crab fisherman's son or some crap. But no, my dad was in the Navy. I grew up as a Navy brat. My dad joined the Navy a little bit later on in his life, because my mom, you know, they had started a family, and he was like, I need a job. You know, it's the 70s. It was right after Vietnam. He joined the Navy. And for a job. It was a family tradition. His father and two of his brothers were actually in the Navy also, and he's from Pennsylvania originally. That's where I was born, is in Pottstown, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Joined the Navy, and, you know, it was like, hey, wherever this takes us. You know, my brother and I were both born up in Pennsylvania, and then he got moved to Virginia. And so always around the water. We grew up in Virginia Beach, right outside of Virginia Beach. Norfolk is a big Navy station. And I was always around the water, and I always loved it, you know. Growing up in summer times and on weekends and stuff, we went to the beach. Yeah. And I always loved it. My dad, though, not a fan of boats.
He's not a fan of boats.
So
he joined the Navy.
He'll tell you he's on ships. He's not on boats. He likes big ships. He likes doing that kind of thing. Very, very good at his job. He's a senior chief, retired from the Navy, and very proud of his service. He did a great job, but will not get, you know, voluntarily. He'll do it.
So he doesn't go on the tours.
He has, you know, with my mom, before my mom passed away, he'd go on the boat, but like the beach and boats and all that things, not his thing.
Okay.
Being out in the middle of the ocean, doing what he does on a naval vessel, doing military thing, that's his thing.
Gotcha.
But being on boats, I always loved it because I grew up around it. It really wasn't as like my mom's side of the family grew up in or is from Bayville, New Jersey.
Okay.
Crab fishermen, those kind of things. And when we were a couple miles is where my grandma lived in Bayville, New Jersey, from the shore. Kind of like seaside area with Jersey Shore.
Yeah,
that stupid
absolutely.
show kind of ruined the whole of New Jersey. But no, I grew up around there, and we used to go to the shore. We go to the beach, and me and my brother would go down there by ourselves. Back in the day, when you could ride a bike 2 miles, and nobody cared. And you'd go down there, and we'd go crabbing, hand lining for crabs, and I always loved that. And that was a gift for us to go up there in New Jersey and go do that. And then in Virginia Beach, obviously, when my mom would drive us down the shore, we'd go, boogie boarding or whatever and be on there. But I always loved the water. I always loved the ocean. So me, myself, I joined the Army when I was right on the day after my 18th birthday. I actually joined when I was 17 years old.
Was that something that you had like already planned out, or were you looking for, I guess maybe inspired by your dad and the work that he did in the Navy?
It's funny now, me and him talk about it sometimes now, but it was kind of out of nowhere. I had a great life, grew up, on a Navy base a little bit. We went to England for 3 years when I was in school.
Yeah.
Lived in London, England. My brother graduated high school in England. And then we moved back. And I really didn't have a lot of friends. My last 2 years of school was in Virginia. I was kind of by myself a little bit. I had some friends in the neighborhood we lived in Chesapeake, Virginia. And then I'd always been intrigued by the military, and I kind of like the Army side of it more. I'd seen the Navy. I'd been on the ships, and I've seen all of it, the docks and all that crap. But I always liked the Army. I like going out and, running around doing that kind of thing. I didn't grow up around guns. I didn't grow up around tanks. Didn't grow up on an Army base. But I always was intrigued by the military and the Army especially. And so, one day I went to the cafeteria. There was an Army recruiter there. Got to chat with him, and he was apparently good at his job. And that's what I did, was join the Army. And
what was that experience like?
It was great. 18 years old, 1995. Beginning in 1995, I was a senior in high school, joined a delayed entry program in the Army, and so the remainder of my senior year and the entire summer before I turned 18, I trained with the recruiters and did all that crap, and then went off to basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, in the August of 1995, and from there did all that. That's a different podcast. That was interesting. That was a long time dealing with all that crap. Then my first duty station was Germany. Loved it. Again, another landlocked country. How I ended up on a boat is now I'm telling the story. It's kind of hard to get there. But went to Germany, and then that was the war when it was going on in Yugoslavia.
Gotcha.
Former Republic of Yugoslavia. That was thrust right into that. So I was 2 weeks out of basic training. I get to Germany, and my entire unit is already deployed. With NATO to Yugoslavia, to the Balkans, Serbia, all spread out all over. I was an engineer, so I drove a bridge layer. I had never even seen one before I went to basic training. I had a G.I. Joe toy with the bridge that comes off the top of the tank.
And what is the responsibility of that vehicle?
Yeah, so it's movement. It's as an engineer, how you end up in certain jobs in the military is kind of funny too. You take a test, a placement test, and it says, all right, you're smart enough to do this job and you're dumb enough to do this one. I don't know how else to put it.
Is that what it is?
I ended up at the very end of this story. I'll tell you, I was an Army recruiter at the very end of this.
Yeah.
So I kind of got a little insight on that. But apparently I did very well in my placement test. But they were like, hey, you got these two options. Apparently I had a lot of options, but I didn't know that at the time.
Sure.
And so they were like, engineer, combat engineer. I'm like, sounds awesome. When
cool.
You're 17 years old, I'm like, that's the coolest sounding thing I ever heard. I had G.I. Joes and all that crap growing up. But they showed me like a video. It was on a laser disc like that big. You remember laser discs?
Sure.
It was like this big. They put it in the thing, and I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
This is super cool. And they showed me a bridge layer tank coming across, and there's machine guns, and there's I was like, yep, I'll do that.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And then, 6 months later, by the end of December of 1995, I drove a bridge layer from Austria through Hungary into the Balkans on the Sava River. The night before Slobodan Milosevic blew the Sava River bridge up.
Oh, wow.
And was sitting there in the middle of the night and listened to that blow up. And we sat there for 3 weeks in the snow. And I'm from Virginia. I'd never seen snow. And I remember throwing my cow off the top of my bridge layer and it disappeared in the snow. And I was just like, whatever. I just curled up in the bottom of my tank and laid there. Anyway.
What type of, these experiences that you went through in the Army, did it have any impact on kind of like the way that you approach business?
Sure.
Is there any sort of connection there?
And there is. So we can bring it back a little bit. I got down that rabbit hole of joining and all that. And no, but it is. So the reason I do what I do and why I want to do a business is, A, I have a hard time now that I've retired after 27 years of military service, for me to go out and go get a job working for somebody else or working with somebody else. for me personally as a veteran is very difficult.
Why?
Because I was the guy in charge for a long time. But that structure that we were in as in the military is very different, and it's very hard to translate into the civilian world. So entrepreneurship in the military, we have a lot of skills that we can do. But you got to remember, I did the same job from when I was 17 to now I'm almost 45.
Got you.
And how do you translate that into working at a factory, working at a service industry, doing any of those things? I feel like I'm a pretty personable guy. But for me to get told what to do when I was in charge of hundreds of people in very intense situations for a long time is difficult. So to start a business on your own and use the skills that I've built over the years, it should be a natural progression to make your own business.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to do. Now, navigating that has been very difficult.
Do you see kind of like a lot of veterans kind of like stepping into entrepreneurship because of the challenges that you mentioned?
Yes, and I think the military and the government in general are aware of those challenges, and so they started a thing called Boots to Business.
Okay.
I'd like to promote that. Boots to Business. I never even heard of it until my last year in the military. We get put into something called TAPS. It's a transition Army something transition. It's like a transition thing you got to go through, and it's a bunch of different classes about your finances and VA benefits. And one of the options was, and that's the reason I started this business, it's called Boots to Business. Is somebody started it up, and it was with the Small Business Administration, and they came and talked to us, and they were like, hey, if you want to know more, come to this class. So I did. I went through like a 1-week course, and taught me a lot. Taught me a lot about getting an EIN, like how to start business, paying taxes, paying, workman's comp, like what kind of business you're gonna do, sole proprietorship, LLCs,
I love that.
And so they gave us that, and that's a great thing. The military puts a lot of investment into us, and then at the end they don't just say, hey, appreciate it, see you later. They gave us a lot of tools, but it's hard to use those tools, but I feel like I took the opportunity to, had good instructors, and they told me a lot of things. But again, it was 1 week. I didn't get a master's degree or a business, no kind of degree.
Yeah.
I just went out there and got on Google and had my little Boots to Business book they gave me.
Sure.
And started figuring out how to start an LLC and how to pay taxes. And
and what was that first kind of like business that you did?
So I've done a couple of business. I did cotton calls when I was still serving. I came to the farmers market here in Statesboro.
Okay.
And I made I've always done word work, and my dad did too when I was growing up. And I always liked the idea of making money doing something with my hands, doing something on my own. And so I made duck calls, and I like wood.
That's awesome.
Like wood lathe, and I have a big wood shop. And I've always had some sort of shop, whether it's in my garage or now I have a decent sized shop. But making cutting boards, and I've made fishing poles. I've made duck calls and goose calls, and you name it, I've probably made it.
So there's a missing part of this story, which is how you got to Statesboro, right? Like, how did you get kind of like into the Statesboro area?
Right, so the Army, bring it back. So I went to Germany first, did the whole stuff in Yugoslavia and all that, and that was pretty wild. Did that for like 2 years, had a great time in Germany, tried to stay in Germany. And they were like, nope, you got to go. You got to go to Fort Stewart, Georgia. Because they just hand you a piece of paper and there's nothing you can say.
Yeah.
At that point, I was 20 years old. And they say you're going to Statesboro, Georgia. So I looked it up. It's before the internet.
Sure.
Which is crazy.
That's wild.
And I'm like, all right, where's that? I was like, I feel like that's close to Virginia. All right, that won't be bad. So I called my brother on the phone, with the old AT&T calling card where you punch in the 400 numbers and you call on the payphone. And I call him. I say, hey, I'm going to Fort Stewart, Georgia. He's like, man, I'll meet you there. Yeah, it's like a 9.5-hour drive from Virginia. For him.
Yeah.
I'm thinking,
pretty close,
right
pretty close, yeah.
It is not. So he meets me in Georgia, and we go to like Savannah, and I was like, that's a big thing. We'll go to Savannah, and this is before River Street was anything. I mean, it was late 90s, early 2000s. There's a couple places down there. So that's how I ended up in Georgia, and I fell in love with it. It's amazing. My brother did the same thing. He was like, holy smokes. And then turns out, I talked to my dad. I said, hey, I'm going to Fort Stewart. And he's like, where's that? Because he's familiar with Navy bases, not Army bases.
Sure.
I was like, it's by Savannah. He goes, man, when I joined the Navy in the 70s, the first ship he was on was the USS Savannah.
Oh, wow.
And he took a ship, and they came down River Street, and they ported that boat, the USS Savannah, on River Street in downtown Savannah, and he got to be off the ship and all that, and it was like a whole big thing.
Do they still do that?
They used to up to a couple years ago. I think honestly, like 9/11 kind of shut all that down. They used to let people on and off the boat. Like they would pull the USS Savannah down River Street, park it on River Street, and you could and all the sailors would go off in their uniforms and
that's sick.
Go get drunk and hang out. And people they had like the gangway open, and all the sailors took turns and they would show people around the boat.
That's
and
cool.
You could wander around and probably having a cocktail and hanging on the boat. So I thought that was a neat, connection with the area.
Yeah.
And so that was cool. So anyway, went to Fort Stewart, and I wouldn't say god-awful experience, but not the best. Fort Stewart, 3rd Infantry Division, is the tip of the sword. They, initial invasion into World War II.
Sure.
Initial invasion into Iraq. Like that's what they do at Fort Stewart. So I got thrust upon that in the 11th Engineer Battalion, which now is a pretty storied unit since the initial invasion of Iraq. One of the first medals, the Medal of Honor, was awarded to Sergeant Smith from the 3rd Infantry Division from 11th Engineers in the initial invasion of Iraq. It was one of the first Medals of Honor ever awarded in the war in Iraq. So an interesting unit to be in. To be honest, I love the military, loved the Army, loved everything about it. I did not like the 3rd Infantry Division, wasn't a good fit for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I will re-enlist if you send me anywhere. I'll go to Korea. I want to see the world. I'll go to Africa. I'll go anywhere.
You like traveling.
I want to go. Let me go. And they said, if you re-enlist, you will stay right here in the same unit. And there's nothing going on. I mean, this is 1999. There's not, Yugoslavia is not happening. The war, 9/11 hadn't happened yet. None of that. So I'm just sitting there, just wasted away in his crappy barracks. It was a bad time to be in the military. We didn't have a lot of money. We had crap gear. I wasn't getting paid anything. I was getting paid like, somebody will Google it, whatever. If somebody listens to this, probably like $500-600 a month is what I was getting paid. I mean, that's your car insurance, some gas, and like 2 trips to Wendy's. And go to the bar one time. And that was it. And then you wait till the next month and you get paid again. So it was garbage. And I didn't want to be there. So go to St. Patty's Day in Savannah.
Wall of time.
Meet a girl. My wife always knows the story, so if she listens to this, she'll be fine with it. Meet a girl. And she went to Georgia Southern University. Never heard of Georgia Southern in my life.
Got you.
Down on River Street. I met her about 20 minutes later. She got arrested for underage drinking. But I was like, man, Georgia Southern sounds interesting.
Let me go down there. Let me go check it out.
Check it out. Never saw her again. But I remember Georgia Southern University. So, again, before Googling all that, and I'm kind of a dumbass, so I drove all the way from Fort Stewart up to 16, all the way down 16, all the way over. Didn't know there was a road that connected the two. There was no Google Maps. Y'all are going to make fun of me. There's no Google Maps. You can't just punch it in. And so I go, and in the Army, just lost as hell, just drive all the way around. So I go to Georgia Southern. I'm like, Statesboro, Georgia, back in the day when all there was the square. Like a couple little bars, whatever. And I'm like, this is an awesome place. And I had never had any ambitions. I had the GI Bill and some other stuff, but I never had any ambitions to go, go to college. But I was like, this 3rd Ed thing's not really working out. I want to be in the Army, but I got to do something else. So I was like, I'll go to college. So I apply for Georgia Southern, come to Georgia Southern, and get accepted, start going to school. And right when I got out of the Army, though, so they let me out of the Army. Obviously, I just got out. My time was up. I did my time, didn't re-enlist. And while I was going through that transition, I joined the National Guard. They were like, hey, you don't have to do anything else. You can still be in the Army, and you can go to school, and you can be in the National Guard. I'm like, sweet. And it's right here in Statesboro. So, I said I was an engineer.
What is the timeline here? Because you said that like this was internet age. And then you did how long were you at Fort Stewart before you left?
So I did like 2 years and 2 years. So when I joined in '95, I did 2 years in Germany and I did 2 years at Fort Stewart.
Got you.
So this is 1999.
Got you.
So I got out of the Army and went to college starting in August of '99, like fall semester of 1999. So I get out at Fort Stewart, come to Statesboro. Joined the Guard immediately, and I'm an engineer, so there's an engineer unit on 3rd ID at Fort Stewart, and then the unit here. So every little small city in Georgia has a National Guard unit, pretty much. So Metter, Glenville, Statesboro, Macon, Dublin, Thomasville, everywhere has got like a little National Guard. Happens to be the one, but they're all different units. Happens to be the one here in Statesboro is an engineer unit.
Got you.
So I didn't have to do anything different.
Yeah.
It could have been an artillery unit, could have been an aviation unit, could have been all these different things, but it was an engineer unit, and so I just wandered in there. I was already an engineer, kind of knew some stuff. Went to Yugoslavia, so I thought it was some kind of big war hero or whatever. And there's all these old dudes there, and they're all from Statesboro. Some people had never been in active duty. Some people were in active duty. Interesting mix. So that got me thrust into what is Statesboro. Like, I mean, there's people there that own businesses, cops, college professors, all walks of life in the National Guard. It was a great introduction to Statesboro for me, joining that National Guard unit. So I was doing the National Guard thing. Again, 1999, nothing happening. Like the news is quiet. There ain't crap going on. And start going to school.
What are you going to school for?
So I was going to school. I originally went as a civil engineer.
Okay.
That's what I originally planned to do. And I took like 2 classes, and I was like, this is crazy hard. There's a lot of math. There's a lot of you got to figure, I hadn't been in school. I hadn't read a book or wrote anything down for 4 years. All I did was drive tanks and blow shit up, you know? So I get to class, and I'm like, I'm already kind of a big guy, and I'm sitting there. I feel like everybody around me is like little kids. It was difficult.
Yeah.
So I ran into a couple guys.
There's an age difference too, right?
There was. So I was already 21 years old.
Yeah.
And everybody around me 18.
Yeah.
And I literally had been around the world and done
Yeah.
some things, and which I'm very proud of, and that's how I got to where I was at. And so I was never like very, I'm a man or anything, so I never put that upon everybody, but it was very difficult. I had teachers and assistant teachers, grad students that were 20 that were talking to me about, hey, you need to do this. And it's difficult. Same thing with how I got into the business by myself.
Right. That's right.
Because it was difficult for me to listen to people that I'm like, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
And have my own ideas about what things should be.
So you took a couple classes
Yep.
in civil engineering.
Yep.
And then what happens?
And then, so I started working at the Square at a bar at Retrievers,
Okay.
Wild Wings way back when.
Okay.
And met my current wife. That's what current wife, the only wife I've ever had.
Okay.
I met my wife working at the bar. And when I was there's some other people that worked there also that were in building, construction, and contracting. So it was BCC, and it was offered at Georgia. I didn't even know that was offered. And I've always liked building things and doing things. And this was a path for me. Construction would have been a path for me to work for myself.
Yeah.
And work on my own terms. And I really liked that. And so I switched over to a building, construction, and contracting major. And those were my people. That was great.
Yeah.
I love those people. I went to school at Georgia Southern for 4 years for that. And as another part of the story, I never graduated from Georgia Southern with that degree. September 11th happened, and I quit school.
Yeah.
But I was also in ROTC at the same time because, again, I was still in the National Guard. I did ROTC, even though my school was paid for through the GI Bill.
Sure.
And I was working. I knew that I wanted to be in the military.
Sure.
At some point. So I was like, man, I'm going to do ROTC, and I'll become an officer.
Man, I know that everybody has one of these stories, but like, where were you at when 9/11 happened?
Where Tillman Park is, right behind Del Sur.
Yeah.
There used to be one house there.
Uh-huh.
There was one old house in the woods back there in the Hurdy National Forest
Okay.
that we rented for like 3 years,
Uh-huh.
me and a bunch of buddies. And we lived in that house back there. And I remember waking up early and in my boxer shorts, eating some Cheerios, and watched it. I turned on the TV and saw the towers fall. And that was the last day that I went to school. And I was an active duty soldier ever since that day again.
Yeah.
Up till 1 month ago.
Yeah.
From that day until, November this year.
So how does that work with your school? Like, I mean, do you just kind of like just say, hey, like this is like?
I just walked away.
Yeah.
I walked away. I went to RTC. I went to school, and I had paid for it all on my own. Well, with the GI Bill and through student loans and stuff. And I went to my instructors, and I went up and I told them, I said, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I said, this is what I got to do. And then I went to the National Guard Armory here in Savannah, in Statesboro, and they were all high alert, obviously. And they put a bunch of people. We got a lot of money, emergency money, to protect the airport.
Yeah.
I went and did orders at the airport because we thought that was going to be a threat. Came out here for months and months. We kind of spun our wheels, and then it kind of calmed down. But I went on orders. I put a uniform on that day and never turned back. Never went back to school. Never did anything. And then it turned into a path of, this is what I'm going to do again.
Yeah.
So I got that one little time where I was a college kid.
Yeah.
And then September 11th happened, changed everything.
Yeah. So 1 month ago, you kind of like, go through your military experience, and then you are now at what state in your life?
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like I'm young enough. I'm not 45 yet. I'm 44 years old. I retired with 27 years in the military, and I've got a couple of kids. And it's like, now what do you do? So I get a retirement check from the Army, and I will give this up to anybody listening that's trying to start a business. If I'm going on the backbone of a retirement, I have a retirement of like, let's call it $2,000 a month.
Okay.
That's what I get from the government for my service.
Yeah.
But to start from nothing and go out and start a business like I know you have,
Sure.
and to say, hey, I'm going to start this business and this is what I'm going to do, is crazy to me.
Yeah.
That's so hard. Me having this pillow to fall back on
Sure.
is still very difficult.
Yeah.
But for people like yourself and some people that I'm sure that are listening that want to go out there and make something happen for themselves, that's all the effort, and it's commendable. It doesn't. I've traveled all around the world. It doesn't happen anywhere but here. I mean, that's a big deal to go out there and put yourself in a line and say, I'm going to do whatever business you want to do, whatever your passion is. And so it's been hard for me to say, where's my next paycheck going to come from?
Sure.
Because my pay got cut in a month, I make a third of what I used to make.
Sure.
And so I still have the same bills, and everybody does that's trying to start another business, so they do what they have to do, and then maybe do their business on the side. And that's what I did kind of my last year, and I trying to make a little bit of a transition to have my business ready to roll when I got out.
Yeah.
But it's very hard.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic happened. I could have got out before that, I stayed another year because of the pandemic because I knew I'm trying to be a recreator, professional recreator is what I say. I'm trying to be a recreator. Pandemic was not friendly to that. I mean, a lot of businesses struggled during that.
That's right.
And so I had a good pillar to fall back on to be still getting a paycheck and still be able to create my business while I was still doing that. And I ended up retiring as an instructor at Georgia Southern at the ROTC.
Oh, you did?
So it came full circle. That's where I ended up leaving from. I got a job with the National Guard for the last 3 years of my military career. I actually worked at the ROTC building with my name on a plaque. Never graduated from there, but for 22 years later, I actually had my name on a plaque in a building as an instructor where it all started.
Yeah, that's awesome. So get me to boats. So I'm hearing that probably a year or 2 years you already knew that this was probably something that you were going to do.
Yep.
And had you been giving tours at that point? Like, were you already touring with people, or was that
during and that's a great question. During the entire time that when I left school to now, I'd always my family's lived here in Statesboro.
Yeah.
And when I deployed to Iraq, I deployed to Afghanistan twice. I ran the training called PTA, pre-deployment training for all the National Guard soldiers in the entire state. When they were about to deploy, we trained them. We created a unit at Fort Stewart where we would train all the soldiers. And so every time we had a day off or a weekend off or a minute off, we would go down to the coast and get on a boat. I've had a lot of different boats, and it was just started out with me and my buddies.
Yeah.
And it was just like, hey, other guys had boats. I ended up getting a boat. Maybe another guy had a different boat. Whatever. Just getting on that water was a way to unwind. And we didn't talk about the military. We didn't talk about anything because it's such an amazing place. It was easy to distract yourself after all those deployments and all the crazy stuff you've seen in the world. If you can get out there on a boat on that water, that was everything. And I knew that's where I needed to be.
That's something that's really interesting because I think a lot of people in this area use that as a way to unwind.
Sure.
What is it about the water that gives that to you?
Well, for me, it's unlike anything in war. Like you can watch D-Day, and guys, I'm sure they come across on a boat or whatever. But it's very rare. Like that's not a place where you're threatened. For me and my buddies, I was up late last night, went to Eagle Creek, hanging out doing trivia stuff, and it was with me and a bunch of Army buddies. And the first thing that was when we're going on the boat.
Yeah.
And it's if you watch a bunch of YouTube videos like I do, a bunch of guys that get out of the military, they all live coast. It's all around the coast.
Yeah.
Or they're in the woods, in the mountains. That's a different thing. But it's very similar.
Yeah.
It's a sanctuary.
Yeah.
It's where we want to be. And the history here too, you got to figure me and my friends that were in the military for as long as we were, we were a part of history whether they like it or not. And you get so ingrained in it after doing that for over half my life. When I was 17, I joined, and then 27 years later I get out to be a part of history, and then to be the United States is only a couple hundred years old. Mm-hmm. And for this area, that's why I knew it would work, doing the business that I'm trying to do, is because the history here is so vast. And so my tours are mostly history tours.
Oh, really?
That's what I really want to do.
Yeah.
Is go down there. You got Savannah River. You've got Fort Jackson. You got Fort Pulaski. I mean, the Civil War and the American Revolution in one spot. You got sunk ships where the French were going to invade, and so the British sank all their ships and left all their soldiers stranded in Savannah, all the way from Bloody Point on Defusky Island, where the British military went and killed all the American Indians on Defusky Island because a guy was dating an Indian girl.
Uh-huh.
I mean, all that stuff happened within right there. It's an interesting thing.
How did you learn about those, that history? Like, was that just you kind of like going out there exploring and studying? Or
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, you go, just like everybody else, read books and look on now you have the internet. It's very easy to find stuff. But yeah, reading a lot of different books. Now I also, a little side job that I do, I work with South Auctions and auction off a lot of stuff with Alex Grovenstein. We do a lot of personal property auctions or estate auctions. And it's really neat. Like right now on the auction, we have Confederate notes from the Civil War, and we have a deed to a property in Savannah from 1774. Is one of the things we're auctioning off right now too. So that I love all the history, and I love how America was made, because a lot of strife happened in my career. A lot of bad things happened, but it was for a reason. So if I can take people out on a boat and kind of give them a taste of, and it's people from the Midwest, it's people from all over, some people from Savannah that never get to go see that, never even knew it was there.
Uh-huh.
They may have grown up in Savannah, to see the things that you can see from the first Americans that came here, and on the American Indian side, they all lived on the coast.
Yeah.
That's where all the food was at.
Yeah.
And so when you step off the boat and you get into like an oyster bed or an oyster shoal,
You'll find
that that's where they all lived. That's
Yeah.
that's how they survived. And so I like to be there too. And every single person that gets on that boat loves it too.
Yeah. How long are the tours typically?
Half a day. It's kind of no timeline. If you hire me to go on the boat, and we got a website, lowcountrydrifters.com. If you go on the website and you say you want to go on a tour, it's kind of up to you. You know, we'll go at low tide. So the tide swing in Savannah is crazy. It's one of the biggest ones on the entire East Coast. So the swing could be all the way up to like 12 feet, depending on the moon. So if we want to go to a beach, or if you want to go fossil hunting or go to Sharktooth Island or something, we kind of got to go at low tide. Otherwise, the island's almost completely covered with water.
Yeah.
So we got to go at low tide. So if low tide's at 2 in the afternoon, or if it's at 8 in the morning, and then when we get done with that, if the tide comes in and we're done doing that, we can go to the marina, we can go down River Street.
So it's kind of like flexible, right?
It's very flexible.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to kick me off the boat. If you want to stay all day, I don't care. Yeah, it's fun.
That's very cool.
I'd be on it anyway. So if you want to ride, let's go.
You know, what's interesting about your story is you come from a place where it's like very military based. And so like, you know, if there's some people that are listening to the show right now that maybe want to get into business that has maybe a similar past to yours, what advice would you have for them? Like how would you show them the ropes, if you will?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I've tried to explain that too. And there's some really good at Boots to Business, and you can Google it. Boots to Business is amazing. Never even heard of it until I was getting out, and I'd actually gotten out before I got out of active duty and went and joined the Guard. And then I re-enlisted, I think, 16 times during my career to rejoin the Army over and over. They call it re-enlisting. Never even heard of it, but during my transition to retirement, that was offered to me, and it's a great resource. It works very, very closely with the small business administration all around the state, and there's representatives that come talk to you, and there's a lot of resources through the VA if you are a veteran. And if you're not, the small business, the building we're in right now, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. There's so much stuff out there, but it is government stuff, so they try to advertise it, but it's hard for them to advertise it. It's hard to find it unless you're looking for it.
That's right.
But you got to go out there and try to find it. And as a veteran individually, or if you are a veteran listening to this, there are so many things out there. It's not free chicken, and any of the vets will know exactly what I'm talking about. We call it free chicken. It's not free chicken, but it is something you can go grab.
Yeah.
And it's a real resource, and there's a lot of money thrown at it. And there's different things. I got another buddy that's starting a pecan farm, and he's with the agriculture, trying to do that with the USDA.
Yeah.
There's a lot of grants there as a veteran farmer. And then, still got to set up an LLC, still got to be in business for yourself. And these are things that we're not taught as veterans, or just as a normal person, depending on what your degree is in college. It's very, very hard to start your own business, but there's resources out there, and there's, like what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
Absolutely. What does the future hold for Low Country Drifters? Like, what's the dream there?
So the dream is for me to ultimately, I think it's 3-phase. And my wife is a gift, Stephanie Neal. She's really good at what she does. She's a graphic designer. She built my website. She does my Instagram, all my social media, and does all the designs of all of our business cards, all the hats, shirts. She does all that. I mean, that would be tens, as you well know, tens and tens of thousands of dollars.
100%.
And she's been a gift. I couldn't do it without her. I probably could, but I'd be in serious debt. So I would have done it, but I'd be in serious debt. So she does a great job at that, and she's got another job too. She works for a construction company doing that same thing for a construction company.
Understood.
And then she's paid very well for that, and they know what her gift is. And so to have that connection with her has really made what I have in my head become a reality.
Sure.
Because that's hard. Getting that out of your head and into the world is very difficult. So it's kind of 3 phases. It's going to be apparel. We want to do like T-shirts and hats. That's what I call her. Gas station hats are very popular.
Sure.
It's a big deal. So that's a big business opportunity. And it's like, man, these guys are already doing it. Somebody's got to do it.
Sure.
People are going to buy stuff. You got something cool, people want to buy it.
That's right.
So I want to be the person that they buy it from.
Sure.
So I've tried to make those connections over the years of people that actually are in that business. And so I think it's big time networking, like we're doing right now. Networking, finding people, like-minded people, or people that know that industry. Where do you buy the hats? Where do you get them embroidered? All those things you don't think about when you just pick a hat up off the rack.
That's right.
Is where did this come from? So we're trying to do that. So that's the dream. If you talk about where this is going to lead, is hopefully that's where at least 50% of the income comes from.
Got you.
Is through apparel with low country drifters apparel.
Okay.
Because why not?
Yeah, of
Columbia
course.
did it. Patagonia. Somebody did it. Somebody started it. Why can't it be me?
That's right.
So I'm going to try really hard at that. And then it's going to be not – I love driving the boats. I don't want – I hear a lot of people say you don't want to do what you love as a job.
Sure.
I do right now.
Sure.
But I don't want that to be tainted with it being a job. So eventually I want to get other people. Getting a captain's license was very, very difficult. It took me almost a year to be a certified captain, which you have to be to have paying passengers on a boat.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to get a TWIC card, Transportation Workers Identification Card. You got to get a medical exam. You got to go through a whole giant course, Coast Guard course. It's like 60 hours, and you get a merchant mariner. You become a merchant mariner.
Sure.
And so I had to do all that. So I want to get a couple more people educated on that process, and I want to pay for at least 2 more captains to become captains.
Okay.
And then I want them to run my boat.
Got you.
That's the ultimate goal.
Got
is
you.
for me not to physically be doing it.
Uh-huh.
And maybe my kids, I told them, if like, hey, you want to make $500 a day
Yeah.
and not work at Wendy's, whatever,
Uh-huh.
come do this business. You
Sure.
know? But they're going to have their own dreams too. If they want to do it, that'd be great. But I want to help somebody else pursue their dreams too. And if that's what they want to do, I want to support them. I want to pay for their captain's license. I want to put them on my boat, and they're going to get a cut and be a partner in the business, and they do drive the boat.
Got you.
And hopefully, have 5-6 boats by the end of this, and I get a cut off all of that and selling T-shirts and hats on the internet, and I get to hang out with my kids.
Love that.
That's
Love
the
that.
goal.
Love that. Thank you so much for your service, like number one, and then thank you so much for being an inspiration, right? Like I think that, I was not aware that, for veterans that is such a connection between entrepreneurship. In fact, I'm excited to kind of like maybe reach out to some of your buddies and kind of like
Sure.
bring them onto the show, because I think that that's a huge like underserved market here in the U.S. Well, thank you, Bryan, so much for coming to the show. I appreciate your time, and looking forward to getting on the boat with you.
I hope so. Thanks,
Sounds
bro.
good. Thank you.
Hey, man.